Changed from DC machines to, well, effectively Tesla coils. What a Tesla coil is, it's a transformer, but a very specific transformer, being that they are air-cored, as in there is nothing in these tubes apart from air. They're also resonant in the same way that a swing is resonant. And they're a transformer, which so means they'll take a low voltage up to a high voltage by electromagnetic induction. So I will use this one to demonstrate with, because it's probably the safer of the three. Inside here is a load of electronics. I'm not going to go into how that works, but effectively what I'm doing is, around this primary coil, which has 4 turns, I'm going to be putting about 300 volts AC at around 280 amps. So if you know your Ohm's law, that's about a megawatt. Now this is powered from AA batteries. Any clues how long a megawatt lasts on AA batteries?
Not very.
Yeah, there's a trick to it. I'm only actually applying that AC value for, I think it's about half a microsecond. So 2 millionth of a second. Yep. But in that time, what it will do, the radio frequency that I am producing, there is a capacitor similar to those in series with that. That forms a resonant circuit. And what that means is that I can actually get up to those sort of currents and voltages like a swing. You give it a good kick, keep on giving it a kick at the right time, and that swing will get really, really big. And then what I do is, just as the swing is going up as high as it possibly can, I pull the pins out on the top. In electrical terms, I turn everything off, make it go high impedance. Now what you've then got is a lot of current and a lot of voltage swinging around and absolutely nothing tethering it. 2 things happen from this. 1, you get a massive pulse. 2, you get a massive increase in voltage. I then take that massive increase in voltage and put it into the secondary. Now this secondary is also tuned to exactly the same frequency as the first. So what we're actually getting as well, and I know this is pretty complicated, is power transfer between here and here as well. And when that goes into free fall, due to transformer action, this one goes into free fall as well. Now you've got 4 turns there and about 300 volts. You've got just shy of 1,000 there, plus you've got that multiplication factor of me removing the drive and making it go high impedance. So out of the top here, probably get 75 to 100,000 volts. Okay? Not bad for a set of AAs. So, as I said earlier on, DC electricity will jump, say, 3,000 volts for a millimetre. So 1 millimetre gap is 3,000 volts. So 70,000 volts will get you about that, something like that. Okay, and I think this is running a little shy of maximum at the moment, but there you go. Now you can hear that. What you hear is the atmosphere moving out of the way, because suddenly it's got quite excited in an electrical sense. That causes a little, almost a sonic boom, which you hear. Yeah, and you can hear that just ticking away nicely. But we can do better than that. And the way we do better than that is by the application of a bit of physics and a bit of knowledge of lightning. When that happens, that piece of atmosphere that you can see is highly charged, what's called ionized. It also means it's conductive. And the good thing is that actually stays around in the atmosphere for probably 20-30 microseconds. So what we do is we sneak up behind it and stuff another one in there before it goes away. So what then happens is you've got that one there already, rather than it starting from scratch again, it starts from the top and puts another one. It's not perfect, you don't quite get double, you get a degree of diminishing returns, but you can get almost twice the height. And of course somebody thought, okay, that's cool, what happens if we keep doing that? So we can keep growing that height. And that means from a relatively low voltage, and I can never remember the settings on this, there's a little LED down here that tells me what it's set to. And I always get it wrong. There we go. Now that was quite slow, and we're actually letting the ion channel fade away. But if so, I said we do it quite quickly, we can then get something a little more amusing. Now what you hear as that tone is exactly the same as you heard before, which is not just one in this time, and I think there's 32, one after the other. That gap you hear as a frequency, and I think that one's probably 1.5 kilohertz, something like that, so you hear it as a nice high-pitched little tone. I can't remember how I left this programmed. No, I didn't. Okay. This coil is programmed to do all sorts of stuff. Some good. Some bad.
All good.
This was actually the development for all of my electronic coils. And for the real geeks amongst you, yes, it's still on Veriboard. It's getting on for 10 years old. It actually has done more demos than I care to remember. And yeah, one day I'm going to rebuild it, but you know. But very good just for giving small demos. The other thing is, because it's on batteries, it is pretty much safe. The voltage across the top there, nowhere near, sorry, the current across the top there is nowhere near enough to give you any problems at all, as long as you're a healthy human. In fact, I've even electrocuted Dora Breen with this one. Well, he asked. So, take that, and then we power that with mains. So we've got exactly the same as we've got there, powered by mains. Obviously we can put a bit more current into it to make the sparks brighter and louder. And I have had some problems with this, so I may have to stop the demo, which is a bit annoying. The other thing I'm going to utilise is that sound that you can hear. Obviously, if you do that at different frequencies, you can get notes out of it. Okay. So, now comes the other bit of safety stuff. Is there anybody in the room with cochlear implants, pacemakers, hearing aids?
What?
Make sure it's not set on loop.
Okay.
It's a bit annoying. Or asthma. Okay, let me explain the asthma. It's not going to do you any harm. These coils produce enough ionized particles to actually produce ozone, which is absolutely brilliant when it's 300,000 miles up there or however high it is. But low level, it's a throat irritant, and if you do suffer with that sort of thing, get out, get in the fresh air, it will just go away. It's nothing more than a tickle, but I know some people find it a bit annoying. So, that said, we will see if we can make a little more noise and pretty stuff. Okay.
Time well spent. Fantastic.
I'm stopping at that. I can't. I'll give you some background to that. When I knew I was coming here last week, I thought, oh, I'll just set this up. It'd been stored since about February. Set it up, started running. That one had got sparks coming out here, got sparks going up and down it. And you'll notice that one's a little less power than that because I'm a wuss. And I've been spraying it with varnish every night for a week to try and get rid of it. And it worked. So, that really ends everything I've got to tell you. But please ask questions. I'm open to anything, you know.
Can I ask what you did just then? So your laptop was sending us a music signal, I guess. So
my laptop's actually really just a dumb terminal. If I take it right the way through from the laptop for the real geek,
please.
The laptop is running with an RS-232 emulation program onto a fibre. The reason I use a fibre is twofold. One, USB tends not to like high voltage, and two, if anything ever goes wrong, I'd like to keep my laptop. That goes into a Pi Zero that's sat here. In the Pi Zero is software that I've written and also a collection of MIDI files that I can pick from and then choose 2 MIDI channels from that stream to send to each of the two, drivers that are here. There's 2 drivers sitting on the I2C bus. They individually take frequency and power information from the Pi Zero, and then that codes into on-off bursts to give you the frequencies, the actual audio frequencies. So out of those will come a pulse, I don't know, a millisecond long to give you a kilohertz at a millisecond spacing. Yeah, that doesn't give you a kilohertz, that gives you half a kilohertz, but you get the idea. Then goes into a circuit that, and this is where it becomes really interesting, initially sends a pulse but at RF. That pulse is reflected by the coil and comes back, and then you monitor the current of that coming back. That you then send back to the coil, and you amplify it and send it back to the coil. That produces a tuned circuit and pulses at the same frequency that the primary and these capacitors are set at, which is also the same frequency that is a capacitor, believe it or not. Yes, you are the other plate of a capacitor, and that's plate 1. And that are set to that same resonant frequency. If I just let that run, it would destruct itself very, very quickly, because you're looking at a resonant circuit, it has almost 0 impedance when it's truly resonant. So it will just build and build and build, and you've got to stop it. To make sure this happens, there is another current sensor that actually takes average peak. If it gets over that, it will actually shut down the drive before the 4 sets of MOSFETs in there explode. I say MOSFETs, they're actually IGBTs. They are probably, I think it's around 300 amps or so. They tend to always end up around that. They're rated at, I think it's 150 amps pulse. Yeah, I'm running them at 300 amps. But there's this wonderful curve with the transistor that says pulse length and current, and it goes that way. Well, I keep stretching the pulse length, so it's really small, so obviously you can just extend that forever, can't you? Not quite. You have to keep them really cool. Hence the 2 big cooling fans immediately above the heatsinks. And I can only do relatively short run times because the heatsinks aren't massive. I've got 8 transistors in there. If I heatsink them properly, it'd be the size of the box on its own. So it's a bit of a give and take kind of situation. But with these coils, that sort of power is, I don't think you want too much more than that. I have run one flat out and it will give a spark up to about there. Not for long.
Any more questions?
Have you got any impressive electrical burns?
No.
Do you want some?
The night's young, I mean, that's disappointing. Okay.
Yeah, one thing I was saying about RF burns, that they are one of the worst sort of burns you can get, because what happens is it burns your skin and then it cauterizes all the skin all the way around it, which leaves an open wound that will never heal. So the only way to actually sort that is to then cut more skin away. Sorry if you're drinking or eating. Yeah, they're really nasty, and they go full thickness very, very quickly, because unlike with heat, your skin goes all crispy, but the crispy skin's actually quite a good insulator of heat. With a spark, it goes straight through the crispy skin into the good stuff underneath and keeps going, and you can get very, very nasty burns from RF. And yeah, I have had some nasty burns from RF, usually by accident. Yeah.
Usually.
The biggest, yeah.
What about the rest of the situation?
No comment. The big problem is, as I was saying, with this being one plate of a capacitor and you being the other, when I'm doing demos with really powerful coils, I tend to forget, and I'm usually reminded pretty rapidly, that I'm the other plate of that capacitor. So if I'm standing close, hold that a minute, will you? Don't worry.
Not going to help me much.
If I'm standing close, I'm only going to use this one because it's moderately safe. Yeah, and that's because he's the other plate of that capacitor.
Part of my mission in life. Ah!
Had to do it.
Swine. No samosas for you.
And so what I'm sort of doing a demo, and I've touched something earthed, and I get an RF burn from something that's earthed, which doesn't matter how often you do it, it's just wrong. You don't expect earth to come up and bite you. But of course it's you biting earth, really. So yeah, that's how I kind of quite regularly get little RF burns. Luckily, it's not like I was holding the top of it. There's no real current or power there, but it is enough to drop a little pinhole in your finger with a nice cauterized edge. So yeah, I've had a few of those.
Actually, it'd be a great amount allotment for keeping the pests off. Yeah, anything that goes near the bed is going to get just vapor.
Mosquitoes don't like it.
There you go.
The only trouble is you tend not to be able to sleep with something that bleeding noisy in your bedroom.
Yeah, I've cauterized slug.
There you go. Fantastic. I bet you looked it.
Any other questions?
Have you ever had to fill out the health and safety certificate?
Yes. I've actually got the full risk assessment for doing this, and the full, yeah, I've been through the whole lot.
Painful.
It is painful, although, as you well know, once you've got the documentation in place, changing it from one venue to another is, yeah. I mean, I've done a couple of things for the BBC, and they don't let you in unless you're pretty squeaky clean. I was just coming to it. I actually run 2 events for people who are interested in high voltage. One is in Cambridge, which is coming up in October, which is a public event. That's where your health and safety comes into. And we've got some coils there that are probably 11, 12 foot tall. So you imagine what you've seen there, multiply that up to something, you know, properly big. As I say, that one's absolutely public. And then there's one in Nottingham in March, in a scout hall.
With a good earth in it?
Which has a good earth, yeah, no, it's actually got its own, not only has it got its own earth out of the back of the hall for some strange reason, it's also got a 32 amp socket for charging caravans.
Are these strange caravans with like big tin foil lids on them?
Yeah, those
and
are the
lots
ones,
of
yeah,
light?
they're sort of vertical caravans, yeah. And so that's next March, and you're very welcome. Got details there of the website and everything else if you want to find out, pop in. You know, even if you just want to see pretty sparks, quite happy. I don't mind. Yeah, I just like promoting high voltage, which is a weird thing to say. Not the strangest things I've ever said, but...
And is that public, did you say?
Is that?
Public, the one in the Scout?
Public.
Public?
Yeah.
Not technically, but if you register online, I will then invite you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't just let people wander in, but if you email me and say, can I come, I only turn away young kids, dogs. I'm trying to... I'm not answering that on the grounds I'm going to incriminate myself. Oh, you mean the barky variety?
Well, I did.
No, I've had, you know, can I bring my 3-year-old? No. Why? Because. But I mean, in general, the only thing I do say is no pacemakers, no cochlear implants. Everything else we can deal with, but those two things are a massive health risk for the people doing it. If I explain the two actual risks, the pacemaker has nothing to do with getting an electric shock. You imagine that you've got a coil 300 amps at this size, you then get something that's 11 foot tall with a primary that's about that diameter, taking 32 amps from the mains. The electromagnetic field that it creates is huge, and it has never happened. Personally, I think it is highly unlikely to affect a pacemaker, but hey, I ain't making that choice. I have heard evidence of a coiler that got a pacemaker that if you got too close felt it kick in. I don't know how true that is. Again, I'm not risking it. Cochlear implants are actually even worse because the little probes that go into the nerves tend to attach to them fairly loosely, and any electrical interference can cause severe pain. And I know that to be true, so that's a definite no-no. The other things I mentioned, obviously asthma tends to go away. Yeah, certainly a voice so to speak. Asthma is, yeah, just get out, get some fresh air. Most people come back in. I've never had that cause an issue other than a mild irritation. Funny story, there's one place, we were doing a new venue, and it was actually a steampunk convention. We got invited, and I didn't do the safety talk. A colleague of mine did the talk from my notes. So he stood up and said, right, is there anybody here who has implants? If so, I'm afraid they have to move to the Black Society. And my wife was one of the stewards, and this rather well-endowed lady came and said, does he really mean me? Cochlear implants, dear. So yeah, I mean, loud noises and dark. In this sort of environment, absolutely fine. These, you can tell, were fairly loud. Again, when you scale that up, I usually have air defenders in here. You've got to, if you're coming, you've got to be aware that it is going to be very, very loud, and also we turn the lights off because we like the look of the sparks, which adds our own safety concerns, but hey, you've got to temper the enjoyment for the safety. But yeah, I mean, they're good fun events. The Scout one's done entirely for Scouts, and the one in Cambridge is done entirely for the Cambridge Museum of Technology, which is also a fantastic place to walk around, and you get a chance to go around that as well. So, two worthwhile events, I think.
Any more for any more?
What's your collection of broken parts like? Have you blown a couple of transistors?
I actually keep all my blown transistors. I suppose one day I ought to try and go and put them on something from end to end to prove. I mean, I've been doing this electronics-wise probably for about 16 years, and I have a box of transistors that is about that size, and I think it's full to the top at the moment. And I've also got some transistors that are about that size in it as well, which is why I don't play with big transistors anymore. They're not cheap.
Any more? No? Well, in that case, thank you very much for
Thank
a
you for having me.
fantastic talk. Yeah, sparks are always good. And I'll go and get some samosas.
Fair enough.
Ooh.